Good morning and welcome. My name is Kirsten Langhorn, and I am the Managing Director for Langhorn Custom Homes and the 2021 Chair of the Loudoun Chamber of Commerce's Public Policy Committee. It's my pleasure to welcome you to our virtual Loudoun County Chamber of Commerce 2021 PolicyMaker Series webinar, Impact of the 2021 General Assembly Session. After a record number of days in session in 2020, the General Assembly was forced to be laser focused on the issues and priorities that matter most to the Commonwealth during the much shorter 2021 session. Impacts of legislation like a paid sick leave bill and liability protections for business will have long-term consequences for economic growth and recovery. Commitments to investment in broadband expansion, business-ready sites, transportation, and Virginia's Housing Trust Fund will also continue to maintain Virginia's place as one of the best states for business. Thank you for joining us as we dive into the legislation recently enacted that might also be down the road. One housekeeping note before we start: please do share your thoughts on your social media. When you do, please use our hashtag, hashtag LCCC Policy, that's L followed by 3 C's. Please remember to also tag @Loudoun Chamber. I would also like to let everyone know that we will have a Q&A session after we hear from our esteemed panel. Therefore, if you have questions, submit them in the Q&A box. Provided we have time, we will get to as many of the questions as we can. Next, I would like to recognize our wonderful sponsors. Today's event and our entire PolicyMaker series would not be possible without the generous support of our sponsors. First, thank you to our signature series sponsor, Inova Loudoun Hospital, and our spotlight sponsor today, Dominion Energy, and we will be hearing from both of these wonderful sponsors in just a little bit. Please join me in recognizing our advocate sponsors for the 2021 PolicyMaker series. They are Backflow Technology, Bank of Clark County, BCT, the Communities Bank, the National Sports Medicine Institute, Northern Virginia Community College, Toth Financial Advisory Corporation, and McGuire Woods Consulting. Thank you, advocate sponsors. I would now like to recognize our 2021 enterprise sponsors for their invaluable support. They are the Community Foundation for Loudoun and Northern Fauquier Counties, Dominion Energy, the George Washington University Science and Technology Campus, Janelia Research Campus, Sandy Spring Bank, and Telos Corporation. Thank you, enterprise sponsors. It is now my pleasure to recognize the Chamber's 2021 business partner, the Economic Development Authority of Loudoun County, and our 2021 community partner, the Loudoun County Department of Economic Development. And thank you so much to our media sponsor, Loudoun Now. Now I'd like to introduce our series signature sponsor, Inova Loudoun Hospital. We will be hearing from Mike Forehand, the Vice President of Government and Community Affairs with Inova Health System, for some remarks.
Good morning. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Inova is really proud to partner with the Loudoun Chamber and sponsor the PolicyMaker series throughout the year. At Inova Loudoun Hospital, we're specifically grateful to the business community for your unwavering support this year. The wonderful gestures to our hospital and team members throughout the COVID response, including the Feed Loudoun's Healthcare Heroes, have been really inspirational to us and to our team members. As we welcome our Loudoun County General Assembly leaders today, after a really consequential General Assembly session, many thanks to members of the Loudoun House delegation for their commending resolution, honoring the teams at Loudoun Hospital and the Inova Ashburn Healthplex for their work during the pandemic. Thank you specifically to Delegate Subramaniam for spearheading the effort, and to Delegates Delaney, Murphy, and Reed for their support on that resolution. We're really grateful for that. When we opened the new North Tower at Inova Loudoun Hospital in April of last year, really few could have predicted the year that would come. And Inova Loudoun Hospital in that time has stepped up and provided world-class care to COVID-19 patients since March, while at the same time safely serving all the healthcare needs of the Loudoun community. Inova Ashburn Healthplex has performed tens of thousands of curbside COVID tests, while at the same time maintaining a full-service emergency room for all in that community. While that's all I has to say is, while we remain hopeful for the light at the end of the tunnel in the pandemic, it's really important to know that now is not the time to delay your necessary healthcare. We encourage you, your businesses, to encourage your employees, your family, your friends, your neighbors, that it's safe to visit a healthcare provider. It's safe to visit Inova facilities. And particularly if you're having a medical emergency, it's safe to visit the emergency room in the hospital. And it's critically important that you do so. At Inova, we've re-emphasized safety throughout everything we do through our Safe at Inova practices, providing more details to you, our patients, about our strict PPE protocols, cleaning of our sites, and other practices meant to keep you safe when you visit with us. It's really important that we do the things to make you feel the most comfortable to take care of your everyday needs. You can learn more about that at inova.org/safety. Lastly, talking about that light at the end of the tunnel, Inova is extraordinarily proud to be a part of the regional vaccination effort. This week, we eclipsed a really important milestone: 250,000 doses of the COVID-19 vaccine given to people from all across our region. That's 1/3 of all doses given in Northern Virginia and 1/4 of all the doses given by any hospital in the Commonwealth at large. All those given by an Inova team member. Here in Loudoun, we're really pleased to be partnering with the county to provide them vaccinator staff at the Dulles Town Center mass vaccination site. Early on, we vaccinated many of Inova's, Loudoun County's public safety and first responder heroes, and we're really proud to partner with that. So in closing, thank you for the opportunity to speak this morning. Thank you to the Chamber for your support and your partnership. Thank you to the business community for your long-standing support of Inova Loudoun Hospital. Keep wearing your mask, practice physical distancing, get your vaccine when it's your turn, and otherwise have a great day. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you, Inova. Now I'd like to hand the stage off to Tim Sargent, Manager of State and Local Affairs with Dominion Energy, who is our spotlight sponsor today.
Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you for having me this morning. Very happy to be with you. Appreciate everybody's connection here, and we're very pleased to serve as a sponsor for the Chamber's post-General Assembly event. Many, many thanks to Tony, Howard, Grafton, Kristen, and the entire Loudoun Chamber staff for providing this wonderful opportunity to come together, not only with our elected officials, but with all our friends and colleagues in the Loudoun business community. Welcome this morning to Senators Boisco and Bell and Delegates Murphy, Reed, and Subramaniam. Let me start with an understatement. You have been busy. From the pandemic emergency to landmark legislation, you've covered so many bases, and we're eager to hear your perspectives on all of this. One of my Dominion colleagues participating in the meeting this morning is Scott Price, our Regional Policy Director in Northern Virginia. Many of you will remember Scott from his days as director in Senator Warner's office. We're very glad to have his insight and leadership on the Dominion team. And for those of you who know Scott, you know what a positive person he is to work for and with. We're very glad to have him. Dominion Energy is continuing to work in concert with the Commonwealth during this coronavirus pandemic. We are not disconnecting customers during this crisis. And if a customer service already was disconnected for non-payment, they are encouraged to call us regarding reconnection. We're also providing information to protect customers from scams through our media outreach and other communication channels. And we're also ensuring that Dominion Energy personnel have the appropriate protective equipment that they'll need to respond to any electric service issue, as well as vaccinations. With so many people working at and staying at home, we know you're depending on us for reliable service. Continuing on this course, we look forward to working with elected officials toward the goal of a carbon-free energy future. And with that, I'll conclude by saying thanks to all for joining us for a great program. And Kristen, back to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. All right, so it is my pleasure to introduce the first of our panelists, Delegate Suha Subramaniam, currently serving the 87th District. Delegate Subramaniam has since worked tirelessly to improve the health and prosperity of all Virginians and Americans. After spending time as a technology and regulatory attorney, Suhas was named the White House Technology Policy Advisor to President Obama. After leaving the White House, he started his own consulting firm based in Loudoun County to advise companies and nonprofits on technology, government, regulations, and economic empowerment. Delegate Subramaniam.
Thank you so much. Thank you to the Chamber and thank you to all the sponsors for today's event. And thank you all for being here. Last year was a difficult year for a lot of businesses in Loudoun County and all over the country. I appreciate all that you all have done as a business community to push through these difficult times while keeping people in our Commonwealth safe and in our county safe. Our office worked with a lot of businesses in the area to get them connected with existing resources. And first, I want to say that we'll continue to be a resource to you and do everything we can. So if you live in the Eastern Loudoun County, feel free to give our office a call. I made helping small businesses in particular a priority of mine over the past year. I joined the Virginia Small Business Commission. I was named to that commission by the speaker. And I was also a founding member of the Virginia Minority Small Business Commission, which will help minority-owned small businesses and getting them resources. This past session had its challenges for us in terms of the fact that we were all meeting virtually over Zoom, but make no mistake though that this was a great session for businesses in Loudoun County. We passed an amazing budget that'll ensure historic investments in our infrastructure and housing and broadband access and many other priorities that will help businesses here. I was also proud to carry legislation supported by the Chamber to address skyrocketing tolls on the Dulles Greenway. And together with the rest of the delegation, we passed meaningful legislation that'll help prevent multi-year toll increases. And the other pieces of legislation I carried will also make it easier to work with the Commonwealth, such as the Commonwealth's workforce agencies and many others. So I thank you all for the work that you've done. I'm a proud partner with the business community here in Loudoun County, and I will continue to serve as a resource to all of you. So thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Delegate Subramaniam. Now I'd like to introduce Delegate David Reed. The lessons David learned at an early age prepared him for the hard work that would be necessary for him to become the first person in his family to graduate from college. Out of a deep desire to give something back to the country that has given him so much, in 1988, David joined the U.S. Navy Reserve. David served our country as a naval intelligence officer for 23 years until 2011, when he honorably retired as commander. David and his wife, Barbara, have been married for 25 years and have lived in Ashburn since 2000. Delegate.
Good morning, Kirsten, and thank you very much. I think I lost a little bit of the end of that, but I do appreciate you and Tony and Grafton and the Loudoun Chamber for hosting this today. I think it's really very important that we have these sessions where we can share with the community about what has gone on during the session. And I just want to kind of add a little bit of additional information kind of about my background, especially from a legislative standpoint of view, in that I represent the 32nd District, which is the eastern portion of Loudoun County, excluding kind of that part that is covered in the northeast part by Kathleen Murphy and the far east part by Delegate Subramaniam. I serve on the Appropriations Committee, the Transportation Committee, and both of those are, of course, very important to Northern Virginia and to Loudoun County. I am also the Democratic House Caucus Business Liaison, and I think that probably is due to the fact that they are drawing upon my 30 years of working in the business community here in Northern Virginia. And then recently, I have been appointed to be the chair of the Manufacturing Development Commission. And this is something that I think is really very important because we have elements within the executive branch that are actually working on bringing new businesses to Virginia, which I'm very supportive of. And I think one of the roles that I'm able to pursue with the Manufacturing Development Commission is actually to go and visit those businesses and do those type of things to be able to make sure that we're retaining the current businesses we have. Because I think all of us recognize that it's great to be able to bring new business, but we also have to really work hard to keep the businesses that we have. As we go through this and we start to talk about things, I think what you'll find is that during last year's veto session and then the special session, we spent a lot of time addressing many of the health-related issues related to COVID-19. And then as we got to this session in 2021, we started to begin to address the economic issues as well as the business recovery items that need to be in place so that we can actually have a strong economy moving forward. So I really very much appreciate you doing this today, and I look forward to everyone's inputs and questions. So thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Now I get to introduce Delegate Kathleen Murphy. Prior to her service in the General Assembly, Delegate Murphy was president of Johnson Murphy and Associates, a McLean consulting firm providing strategic counseling and legislative strategies for companies and nonprofit organizations. Kathleen is a member of the McLean Community Foundation. She graduated from American University, magna cum laude, and lives with her family in McLean. Kathleen?
It says that I can't start my video here. Can you hear me?
Hey, Kathleen, hold on one second. I think we just have a technical issue.
Technical. I'm the technical issue.
Hey, Tony. Tony, go ahead and sign off. Hey, Kath. Oh, there you are, Kathleen. You're back. You disappeared for a second. Try now.
Okay, start my video there. Yay! Hi, everybody. Thanks for doing this. I always enjoy the Loudoun County Chamber meetings, and I'm really sorry we can't be here in person. I've been in the House of Delegates now for 7 years, which I sometimes find staggering that it's been that long. I am the vice chair of our Democratic Caucus. I'm the vice chair of the Transportation Committee, and you can imagine that's pretty important for my district because we have so many transportation challenges. I serve on the Board of Veterans Services and the Board of Workforce Development and a bunch of others. I can tell you that this has really been a productive year in the House of Delegates. I was really pleased that we got so many important bills that we've been trying to pass for years. But I was really proud that we passed the affordable housing tax credit bill that I've worked on for a really long time because we really need workforce housing. We need to be supportive. I started the Gun Violence Prevention Caucus. You all know the story that I have lived with my brother's murder. And I'm really dedicated to the issue of keeping our children and families safe from gun violence. And this year, we actually were able to pass some good legislation. So I'm really proud of that too. I serve on the Board of Veterans Services, and there are 107,000 women veterans here in Virginia that we need to pay more attention to. So I got a second women veterans coordinator to deal with those issues. Funding for it was hard to get, but this is the second one. I got the first one a couple of years back now. We're looking at broadband expansion, which I know Jennifer Boisco, Senator Boisco serves on that committee. But I also was able to pass some pretty interesting bills, including a rare disease advisory council we created, which people with children with rare diseases were very, very enthusiastic about finally getting some attention. but we cut down the number of drills for public school kids because they were finding these to be terrifying events for the children. So instead of 3, now we're going to just do 2. So the focus that we have had has been very positive. We really look like we are moving Virginia forward and in a good direction. We work well with the business community as always, and raise teacher pay so teachers can afford to live in this wonderful community. And I look forward to continuing to work with all of you, and thank you so much for your support over the years.
Great, thank you, Kathleen. Now we're going to move over to the Senate side, and it's my pleasure to introduce Senator Jennifer Boisco. Senator Boisco represents the 33rd District in the Senate of Virginia. She has been a grassroots activist her entire life, supporting efforts to make her community a better place for all. She is a graduate of Hollins University in Roanoke, Virginia, and was raised in Alabama and Arkansas. She was first elected to Virginia House of Delegates in 2015. In 2019, she was elected to the Virginia Senate in a special election and was re-elected in November. She lives in historic downtown Herndon. Senator Boisco?
Thank you so much for having me. I am pleased to be here with you all today. We did a lot of good work, and I know that you've heard a little bit about it. I am really enjoying my time in the Senate. We were in person this year, so the Senate was, in the same room together. We were able to have conversations offline, which helped us to get our collaboration and get stuff done. This year, I serve on 5 different committees, including transportation and general laws, the judiciary, rehab and social services, and privileges and elections. So a lot of the work that we did at the committee level, we were successful at getting it across the aisle and waiting for the governor to sign the bills. I carried a total of 12 bills. I got 8 of them passed, including work on in-state tuition for our Dreamers. This year, we got financial aid passed for those same Dreamers. And that's something that I know that Jim Dyke worked with us very closely. It was a coalition of stakeholders that got this done. It was very exciting. We know that people here in our community in Northwest Fairfax, Eastern Loudoun County, will be recipients of that opportunity to continue their education. And that's always something that's really important to me. My mom was a single mom when my parents split up, and it wasn't until she went back to college and got her degree that we were successful and able to take care, my mom was able to take care of us fully. So education's always been a top priority of mine. The other thing that I am really excited and proud of is our work around broadband expansion. I serve as the chair of the Broadband Advisory Council that works closely with the governor and his administration. This year, I passed 2 bills on top of all the major investment that we've been able to do. One is working with our schools and our cable and telecommunications providers, allowing them to collaborate so that all of these low discounted programs that are available, people who need them really don't have access to even knowing about them. And so this bill will be letting the providers work with the school systems directly to make sure that the people in the most need have access and understand that they are eligible for these low discounted programs. Some of them are as low as $9 a month. And I know that I pay somewhere around $140, so it's a huge discount. We know that access is still a problem in other parts of the Commonwealth and even some parts of Loudoun County. And so there was a pilot program that was created a couple of years ago, Israel O'Quinn carried, that allows our utilities like Dominion and Appalachia Power to work with with middle mile providers to lay the fiber so that we increase the number of people who are getting access to broadband. And the bill that I carried on behalf of the governor this year will make that a permanent program. And just the other day, I saw another press release from the governor saying another $17 million in investments for infrastructure has been approved. This is huge. When I joined the Broadband Advisory Council in 2016, we had about $2 million to spend. And this year, our investments, well, last year, I think we had $85 million, and we continue to, this year, I think we put in another almost $50 million. We're really working hard to eliminate that digital divide because we know more than ever this year how important it is that people have reliable access to broadband. I carried several other bills. One was, I heard, I think Scott Price mentioned, looking forward to seeing our infrastructure moving towards carbon neutral. And we had a suite of bills that will look at the electrification of our transportation system and working to get more electric vehicles on the roads. I carried the bill that will put that concept into our energy plan so that we are making sure that we have the necessary infrastructure in charging stations and other facilities that are going to be necessary once all of these electric vehicles are deployed throughout Virginia. It's an exciting time to be in Virginia, and it's a great opportunity for business and investment. And I'm really excited to be a part of that. We also did work around access to contraception for people who are on Medicaid. I carried a bill that will allow a person to fulfill a prescription for a full year of birth control pills if they are a Medicaid or FAMOS recipient. I also am really excited. I don't know if you know me very well, but I love animals. And this year, finally, after a number of years, and I was a young college activist when I started getting excited about cosmetics are no longer, it's not necessary to test on animals. We have much better technologies that are more effective and more accurate. This year, we passed the Humane Cosmetics Act, and it is the 4th state in the entire Commonwealth that has passed this. It hopefully Don Beyer, our wonderful congressman in the 8th district, is going to be carrying it at the federal level, but Virginia is cruelty-free, and I'm just really proud of that. The last thing that I'll say is I am the Senate member on the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority. I've enjoyed that opportunity, and we did make some more investment in transportation this year. It's not enough. We will continue working on that, but I certainly enjoy representing the Senate in that capacity. And I'm so happy to be here with you all. Look forward to your questions and our conversation. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much, Jennifer Boisco. Next, I'd like to introduce Senator John Bell. Senator John Bell serves the 13th District of Virginia. He served almost 26 years in the United States Air Force before retiring as a major in 2007. Following his career in the U.S. Air Force, John continued his work in the private sector, where he led teams of financial professionals and assisted government clients to identify inefficiencies and implement cost-saving solutions. John retired from Booz Allen Hamilton in 2017. He lives in South Riding, Virginia. Senator Bell?
Good morning, and thank you to the Chamber and for everyone for participating in today's event. Look forward to a good discussion. Quickly, want to just review a couple things. Going into the session this year, my priorities as somebody who has a vested interest in business. I'm a small business owner. I operate a small business, so I know the challenges of COVID. And one of the jobs I have, as I said, as the vice chair of the Small Business Commission of Virginia. And during the pandemic, we know we've lost about 25% of our small businesses, which is a very high and alarming number. So going to this session, my number one priority was to do whatever we can to make sure that we can provide safety for all of our people and to help our businesses, number two, get out of this pandemic and go forward. So I did a few pieces of legislation that were specifically related to that. One of them is I think an exciting piece called the Tourist Improvement District. We've done this before with business improvement districts, but specifically this focuses on helping tourist related businesses. From the pandemic, one of the hardest areas is tourism in Virginia. It's a big part of our economy. It's been very hard hit, along with our hotels and many of our restaurants and other tourist related businesses. So this gives them basically another tool in their toolbox to have promotions and do things going forward. It's been used in 27 states around the country very successfully. It was something that Visit Loudoun promoted and was in favor of, along with a number of other tourist operations around the Commonwealth, and I think it'll have a positive impact. We believe this will help these businesses come back up to 2 to 3 years sooner than they would otherwise. Another one I did, I've done a lot of legislation to help Loudoun businesses, and honestly, my best legislation comes when people bring forward problems or challenges. So I encourage you to please do that to all of us who are on today's panel. But this one is an alcohol to go bill I did. And one of the challenges many of our restaurants, distilleries, farm breweries have had during the pandemic, wineries, et cetera, is being able to offer to-go services. So with ID checks in place by the couriers, we found through executive order doing this was very successful. It also was a lifeline to many of the businesses, with alcohol sales being one of the higher profit margin items that really allowed them to continue to operate. So I did a bill that would make this extend the deadline for this, and also have a study. So far, we frankly have had no problems with this, and look to make it permanent. Was happy to do that bill as well. I will echo what Delegate Subramaniam said earlier. On the Senate side, I was the chief patron of the bill on the Dulles Greenway. This has been something that we've worked on many years. Before our service in the General Assembly, there were people working on this, and frankly, people from both parties have worked on it with a variety of solutions. This year, everyone came together, both locally and down in Richmond, regardless of party. We were all on the same page, and I'm very proud of the legislation we passed on a bipartisan manner. And I think finally we will be able to bring some common sense relief to the very high tolls on the Greenway. A couple other bills I'll just mention. I did one that prohibits discrimination of active duty members. We've had a problem with some of our active duty people serving in Virginia being charged higher deposits just because they were in the military, or being charged extra money because they had to have some of their non-weapon military equipment in their apartments. So what we did is we worked with a coalition of people from the private industry, from the apartment renters, from the real estate community, and we passed this legislation, was supported by all the stakeholders to make sure we can prevent this. There was a bit of a confusion in the Virginia Code, which often happens, where we refer to veterans. And there was question whether an active duty person was a veteran, since veterans was often perceived as past tense. So we changed the code to call it military status, and included all elements of those who served or do serve in the military under that status. So we will make sure that people who serve in Virginia are not going to be discriminated against. Having said that, again, I look forward to answering any questions you've got. I serve on a few committees that have a lot of impact on business. One of them is Commerce and Labor. We've dealt with many of the business-related piece of legislation that have come through. Also served along with Senator Boisco on privileges and election. Another committee, General Laws, that kind of is the cats and dogs of legislation. If it's not purely legal, it doesn't go to the judiciary, it will go to General Laws. And then also local government, which is many of the things that affect us here in Loudoun. As I said, I serve on the Northern Virginia Transportation Commission, as well as the Small Business Council, which I am a co-chair. I chair the Board for Substance Abuse in Virginia, and also the Board of Visitors for the Virginia School of Deaf and Blind. And I look forward to your questions. And again, thank you for this forum.
Thanks so much, Senator Bell. I want to thank all 5 of you for your commitment to our community and also being succinct this morning. So I think we will definitely have some healthy Q&A time. So if you have a question, please put it in the Q&A box, not the chat. I'm going to hand this over now to our guest moderator and my wonderful vice chair of the Chamber Public Policy Committee, Tracy Baynard with McGuire Woods Consulting. Tracy?
Thanks, Kirsten, and good morning, everyone. Thank you all for being here, especially the members of the Loudoun County delegation. We really appreciate the working relationship we have with you. You all covered some great topics during your opening remarks, and I'm going to delve a little deeper into those because I think there's some really good information for us as a business community to hear from you and to share with you. And I'll start with the biggest one. All of you mentioned economic recovery, economic development, and clearly as we're looking to getting people vaccinated and all of that, what that means to us. Could you help us define from your perspective what economic recovery looks like and what you think we haven't yet addressed that you think is going to be a major issue? I'm going to start with Delegate Reed, as he's the business liaison in his caucus, and then I'll go around and ask each of you to talk a little bit about, from your perspective, what's going on with the economy and how do we get it so that people who lost their jobs or were underemployed can get back. And of course, all of our companies are frankly looking to continue to expand.
So thanks, Tracy. And I think that's a really good question because I think we have to approach this from two different perspectives. One is from what is it that we need to be doing for businesses so that businesses can actually have a degree of confidence to be able to make future investments and to hire people. And then we also need to be looking at those individuals who maybe are not able to go back into the workforce in the area where they were before, or perhaps are still in industries that are not able to bring them back because the demand is not there. And I think Senator Bell had pointed out that tourism is one of those areas that is a little bit slower to recovery. I think we were also talking in one of the earlier rooms with Monica Blackman as it relates to transportation. And so transportation is not coming back as fast as maybe some other parts of the economy. So it's really kind of a dual track type of thing. We have invested over the last year during the pandemic $120 million in Rebuild Virginia grants. And these are grants that are actually going to small businesses so that it will help those small businesses to be able to weather the COVID-19 pandemic and then be able to keep people employed, continue to keep their facilities in place. And so we need to be able to continue those type of things. One of the other things is that the investments in broadband that Senator Boisco were talking about, one of the things that I like to talk about is the fact that when we're doing the budget in the Appropriations Committee, it's about priorities, things that we need to be addressing today. And some of that is some of the things that we need to be addressing for unemployment insurance and how that is going to help individuals. And then other things are about investments, what we have as far as a future vision of Virginia. And the $100 million that we have put into broadband is really a future investment because you just can't like put $100 million into it and expect everybody to have broadband. I mean, it requires a lot of negotiations, deals, digging to put fiber in the ground, and then we're planning for the future. The other thing with that, as I was talking, is on that people side, is we continue to have challenges with being able to address the unemployment insurance part of the problem. I mean, that is probably, I would have to say, all of us, it is one of the greatest frustrations because it's like we are dealing with that particular agency, the Virginia Employment Commission, and they have just been overwhelmed with the sheer volume of individuals that are needing unemployment insurance, and more money has been put into that. But by the same token, we continue to get calls and we have to help people to be able to work through those things. The other thing is that I would want to point out for kind of that future thing, as well as like needing to address things, is we have put now $34 million into the governor's G3 program so that individuals who maybe lost their jobs or their industry has suffered sufficiently and they want to change jobs, there's that, it's not necessarily free community college, but it's kind of providing that last dollar match for people to be able to actually change careers or get a new job or get trained in a new skill. So I think we're looking at all of these different things. As far as what might be the things that we still have to do, I think we just have to keep working on those things, making sure that we're providing a good environment for businesses to recover and addressing those issues for those individuals who need to be able to be able to pay their rent, pay their mortgage, and take care of their family, and be sure that those systems are working for them.
Cool. Senator Boisco, I'm going to go to you. You serve on, general laws and rehab and social services. So you see a lot of business regulation type initiatives, or they're started there. As I recall, ABC, Cocktail to Go went through that committee. What have you seen in the last year? I think one of the things that business community, I'll just say it, has been frankly surprised by is how quickly local and state government adapted and loosened some of the strings. Are you all comfortable with that? Do you think we'll see more?
On the alcohol thing, I think, that has been the lifeline, and Senator Bell carried one of those bills, I know. That has been the lifeline for our bars and restaurants in the region. And in fact, I hear from owners regularly. They call me on my cell to say, like, what's happening now? So I think we're gonna wait and see if we're gonna make that permanent. Our intention has been, what do we need to do to help these companies and businesses stay afloat so that they don't go under? And we threw resources towards them. In fact, one of the things that I'm really proud that we were able to do in the budget was the tax deduction of up to $100,000 for any business that has a PPP loan, making sure that we're covering costs for personal protective equipment, those kinds of things. It's going to be interesting to see how we move forward as far as what's going to stay permanent and what we only needed to do to get us through to the next, to the other side. And one thing that we haven't talked about is the concerns that I have, and I think a lot of people do, on, the school situation and then childcare, because we know that people have left the workforce because they haven't had someone to take care of their children who are at home. And we still have to make sure that we are on top of that. And then how do we, for those people, and they have been disproportionately women, I will say, how do we help them get back in the workforce so that they can get back where they were at the same level? Those are some of the things that I'm looking forward to working on in the next year to make sure that we are holding harmless all of our good employees and employers and businesses and families as we navigate through this, hopefully the end of this pandemic. But, we've certainly done whatever we could to loosen up regulations and loopholes for people so that they could get the help that they need and could continue their businesses as efficiently as possible.
Delegate Murphy, I want to come to you next to talk a little bit about, we'll talk some about more on economic recovery. You've, as you said, you're spending a lot of time and always have on military and veterans. There's certainly a lot of them in Loudoun County, so it's a county improvement. But also, veterans and military are a huge workforce pool for us here in Loudoun County. Could you talk a little bit about how you think that fits into economic recovery?
Well, I mean, I don't think that's a single unit. I really am looking at this in ways we can help our local businesses take advantage of the round 2 of the PPP, but also these employee retention tax credits, because that'll keep people employed. We have to do all of these things to bridge us into next year, because this is going to be a long recovery. And I've worked hard with our women veterans to make sure that they had a voice. We got a second women veterans coordinator, and I'm in contact with them often to just make sure that the specific problems to veterans, if their voice isn't being heard. So that's what I focus on. But right now in my district, we're focusing on, making sure kids we're going to figure out ways for kids to go to school safely, because such damage is being done with children not being able to be in school. And And the small businesses, I talked to all the small business owners in my region, and, you know, they say the same thing, you know, help us. A lot of them are struggling, and I think it's been remarkable how they have been able to keep their doors open. And we try and encourage people to visit them. I mean, I never cook if I don't have to. So I think every restaurant in the McLean area knows when I'm walking in the door, you know, that they have to feed me. But I mean, it's, the veterans thing is always hard. It's always trying to make sure that the benefits that are available to them, number one, they know what they are. And number two, that you can connect them with the, you know, the right people to help them get what they have worked so hard for and deserve. And David probably knows even more about this than I do, but I work really hard on behalf of our veterans.
Well, that's really important for us, and we sure like using you as a resource on those issues. Again, if you've got questions, please put them in the Q&A. Senator Bell, I'm going to move to you. You know, as you said, you're a small business owner. You know, how do you think recovery looks, and what more do you think we need to do in that area?
I mean, one of the things I'm very proud of the Virginia economy. I mean, we've been very resilient. Our revenues continue to come in higher than every forecast, which is outstanding. See, somebody's calling me right now on my phone because they want to do business. But you know, the Virginia economy has done quite well, and Northern Virginia, because of the high skill set we have and the fact that we're so connected with broadband. You know, I think that's been another strength. Many people have been allowed to do the jobs they do at home, which brings us into, you know, setting the seats for the future. I think first we have to look at the gaps we're going to have after the pandemic is pretty much in the period where we're moving forward from it, and it's past us. And I think we're going to have gaps. I mean, with losing 25% of our small businesses, I think there's going to be tourism in other areas where we've lost businesses, and we're going to have to encourage new businesses to step up and fill those places. The other thing is I think there's a good chance that that many trends that have been predicted, the movement from bricks and mortar to online, have just accelerated. And some things may just be different going forward than they've ever been. And that's going to, you know, make many changes for us, because I think we're going to have to help businesses adapt to that rapid change. And what can we do about that? The other thing I think is going to be very important, and I'm excited about having trade missions again, because we can't understate that. We haven't had trade missions for over a year. There's been a number of virtual things, but it's been unsafe to travel to other countries around the world. We have a worldwide economy, and that's a really important part of what we do, especially with the very vibrant ports we have, to include the Dulles Airport. So without those trade missions, we can't fully sell Virginia the way we normally would. And I think it's very exciting to get, you know, back to that as we go forward. But I think we have to, you know, first keep our feet on the ground and our ears and our eyes open and try to respond to things. The last thing I'm going to say real quick is Northern Virginia Transportation Council. We are very concerned with getting people back on Metro, back on our buses. As we move back to full employment, where people are actually working, you know, in their offices again, the bottom line is we don't have enough parking or transportation for everyone to drive back and forth to work. We need to use these wonderful resources we have, and I can tell you we're putting a lot of money and effort into cleaning and sanitizing, and you've probably seen several of the commercials that are out there. And those commercials, I think we're trying to help educate people, and we ask that you help us with that it is safe to travel on Metro. It is safe to use our buses. We ask people to wear their masks, to sanitize, to social distance to the extent they can. But it's very important that we use these resources in order to get back to our full economy. So with that, I will turn over to other people. But again, we're open to whatever you can tell us that you need and what we can respond to.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you for that message about public transportation. Delegate Subramanian, I wanted to follow up with you because, you know, you started out talking about small business and what General Assembly did this past session. Could you delve a little more into, from your perspective on the Small Business Commission and the Small Minority Business Council, what do you think is good that's already in place, and what else do you think we need to address?
Yeah, sure. That's a great question. Thank you. I'll echo a lot of what was already said. With Rebuild Virginia grants, with a lot of the resources that exist right now. I think the way to really get this economy back going and help businesses is to reopen businesses, frankly. And the only way we can do that is by making sure that we're safe in doing so. I think that what Senator Bell said about making sure that we have the safety precautions in place. I haven't heard anything yet about vaccination. We received an uptick in vaccines recently, and because of that, over the past couple of days, Governor Northam issued eased restrictions on some businesses. And so I think as we see more people get vaccinated, we see some of these numbers start to go down, businesses start to reopen. I mean, the businesses we have in Loudoun County are great businesses that were doing well before this pandemic. And, they just need to be open, frankly, in order to be able to get through this. And so the way to do that is to make sure that we can reopen in a safe and healthy manner. And the way to do that, I think, is vaccinations and, just having the resources to be able to take the precautions we need to take so that businesses can reopen.
Thank you. I'm going to go a little deeper into a couple of other issues. Delegate Murphy, I want to talk with you about affordable housing. It's a priority for you. You've worked on it. Let's talk a little bit about the low income house, the housing tax credit bill that got adopted this year. What's going on with that? And was it all that you had wanted it to be? Oops, you're still on mute. And still on mute. Oh, there you go.
Got it. I don't think it's ever all that we would want it to be, but we got it to mirror the federal bill. We're desperate for workforce housing. The teachers and the firefighters and everyone else. I mean, they can't drive 100 miles to find someplace affordable to live and then come in here to work every day. So yeah, I have been very focused on this for several years. This year, several of us worked on the bill last year, and then we worked again on it this year. And what passed ended up coming out of the Senate. She outranked us all. And I'm pleased with what happened, but I'm sure that when we look at this, we'll be able to do more as we go forward. We haven't had a chance really to sit down and have a discussion about it yet, but we will soon. All of this separation, with people in different. It just has made everything move slower. But I am very excited that we got this bill passed this year. It's gonna mean a lot to builders as well, and it's kind of a kickstart for the economy in that area.
Well, I think it's fair to say that the Chamber will continue to talk with all of you about this issue. As you know how important it is to the Chamber. We're particularly going to be looking at the JLARC study, and also the Department of Community and Housing Development has a study on accessory dwellings in particular. So
right.
Like you, we believe all tools should be available for everyone to use. So again, thank you for your leadership on that issue, and we'll keep in touch for sure.
Thank you.
Delegates Reed and Senator Boisco, you talked about electrification of the transportation infrastructure, which was a huge discussion in the General Assembly this year. Not one that we were expecting. Starting with Senator Boisco, could you talk a little bit more about what that actually means and why it should be important to us as a business community?
Absolutely. So there was a study that was conducted that looked at where I asked the Secretary of Transportation to conduct it last year, asking them to look into where we were, what was the landscape as far as being ready for the electrification of our transportation system. So not only looking at how many vehicles we have on the roads, but what our infrastructure looks like our airports and other public facilities stock looks like. And we found that we were way behind. And so we worked with the automobile industry. You know that Volkswagen is the national headquarters is here in my district right now. We worked with the Auto Dealers Association. We worked with the environmental organizations, and it was a high priority for the administration. We know when speaking with the auto dealers and the big car manufacturers that their expectation is, in order to make this change, we're going to have to do a lot on the ground in Virginia to be ready for them. Their expectation is that by 2045, you're going to be buying an electric vehicle. You will not be buying a gas-powered engine any longer. And so I do think this came out, I mean, kind of snuck up on everybody, but because there were a number of us who were carrying companion bills that worked together to make one big program, it was a success. And I'm looking forward to having the opportunity to see us get gas-powered vehicles off the road and have a cleaner environment. We know that is the top of the list as far as what is polluting our environment. It's our transportation system. So we need to electrify it.
Delegate Reed, again, as Senator Boisco said, there were a number of bills in this area coming at it from different places. You had a few of them yourself. Talk a little bit about how, again, what are the goals, and why it's important to us as a business community to care about them.
So yeah, Tracy, and just to kind of add on to what Senator Boisco was saying, is that we did a whole lot in 2020 to actually address the amount of carbon that is being able to take carbon out of the electric generation part of the sector. And the part of the economy that was still generating the most amount of carbon is the transportation sector at about 48%. And so when you look at this from an environmental goal that then has a downstream effect of actually creating a more healthy living environment for everyone, then that's kind of the overall strategic objective. And along those lines, the way that we approached it this year is that there were really three pieces of legislation, at least in the House, and I'm going to have to defer to my Senate colleagues on the legislation that originated in the Senate. But there were three pieces of legislation that were in the House that were really trying to address three different components of this. One was Delegate Bagby's bill, which would include Virginia in the zero emission vehicle standards, and that would actually take effect in model year 2025. So that would have an impact on automobile dealers, but the Automobile Dealers Association came on board with this because they recognize that they want to be able to sell electric vehicles. And so that kind of addresses the supply side of the equation. The demand side of the equation, which would take effect in 2022, and then would hopefully bridge the gap between now and 2025, would have been my EV rebate program. And the EV rebate program that we put in place is probably one of the most equitable in the nation, because it started out years ago as being just a classic tax credit where you need to be able to make enough money to be able to actually take the tax credit when you file your taxes. This became, through working with the dealers, this became a rebate, a cash on the hood program that would be $2,500 for just the average consumer. And then if an individual was at 300% of the federal poverty level, they would actually get another $2,000. So potentially, and it also applied to both new and used vehicles. So potentially, if you were in that category and you were buying a used Nissan Leaf at CarMax, you'd be able to, instead of paying $20,000, pay $15,000 for it. This all of a sudden puts electric vehicles in a much greater kind of income range or opportunity for a much broader people across the entire Loudoun County, Northern Virginia, and across the entire Commonwealth. And here's the important thing is that when you actually have individuals buy electric vehicles, you're actually putting money back in their pocket every month because the total cost of ownership is less than an internal combustion vehicle. So all of this went into play. And the third piece of legislation that we did was that there's a study that Delegate Sullivan from over in Arlington was to address infrastructure, because you get into these debates about, should we actually incentivize demand or should we actually incentivize infrastructure, and which one will then drive the other part of the economy? I think myself and others believe that if you incentivize the demand, that people will then go to market and build out the infrastructure. And so that's what we did for this session. And the overarching goals were environmental and health concerns, and to be able to move people more towards electric vehicles in the future.
Cool.
Tracy, can I just add one thing, is that the electrification of Virginia has not taken place. This is an enormous business opportunity for lots of folks. And so when you ask what's the business angle, there's an enormous business opportunity for people to start investing and getting involved in this budding and blooming side of transportation. So
good point.
Tracy, can I add one thing to that too?
Sure.
We're all jumping on this one. The other thing I wanted to point out on this is, if we want to take part in this 50 to 100 year opportunity, we have to act now. So I think this plan is great. If we, again, want to bring our tourism back, then we need to make sure people with electric vehicles have the infrastructure to charge when they visit Virginia and go through Virginia. So all of these elements really do fit together. And I think it's a statement about what kind of future we want to have in Virginia. And honestly, we're behind, because whether we like, I'm a fan of electric vehicles, full disclosure, I have 2 Teslas, but whether we like electric vehicles or not, the industry is moving there. People are moving there, and it's a wave coming, especially after 2025 and beyond. So if we want to participate in this economy, we have to move quickly. And I really applaud the efforts we've taken, and look forward to taking more, because we've got some catching up to do.
Really good. Delegate Subramanian, I want to bring you in on this. We're talking electrification, which means we're going to need to generate power for this, again, this sort of evolution on transportation. Let's call it, Virginia has been really excited about solar and wind, particularly solar. I'm going to talk about that. I actually talk about that right now. We have a desire to have a lot more electricity generated through solar. But as we all know, solar is regulated a bit both at the state level and at the local level, particularly when it comes to land use decisions. You've been working a lot in this area around renewables and the Clean Economy Act. Any thoughts on how we balance the statewide and local goal of having more renewable energy and the challenge of some of the generation being done or being permitted at the local level? Any thoughts you have about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when you look at Virginia compared to a lot of states, we have a lot of catch up to do. The Clean Economy Act was a huge first step in that. I think that if we want to make solar a great investment, I'd love to see either local or state incentives to getting solar. I'm actually looking into solar panels myself, and the ROI isn't always great. It's right now it's more of an ethical decision than a economic decision. But I think it starts at the federal level. I think the subsidies at the federal level are critical and a really big part in incentivizing people to get solar. I know a lot of businesses are going solar too, and making sure there are incentives there to do so. And whatever we just went through a pandemic, and right now we have a lot of other priorities we're trying to address. But I'd love to eventually have state incentives for solar for businesses and for residential. So I think that we made a big step forward with what we've done over the past year or two, and we should continue the momentum.
Great, thank you for that. I think it's a very exciting thing. I think we're going to see Loudoun County locally speak to that, and using rooftops or whatever. So we'll be in touch for sure. Thank you. I got one last question for me, not last question, but I'll stop after this. And I'm going to have it for our members who serve on privileges and elections, Delegate Reed, Senator Boisco, and Senator Bell. You know, the $8 million question, what's going on with redistricting? What can we expect over the next couple of years? And I will start with Senator Boisco. Senator Delegate Murphy, stop laughing at me.
Well, as you know, we passed the constitutional amendment that will make a redistricting commission a nonpartisan, which means it's going to be taken out of the hands of the General Assembly. And so there will be public meetings. There are representatives from the House and the Senate, but they're not going to be collaborating and having conversations with us as they are making their decisions with the citizen members of that commission. I was hopeful that we were going to have the data back from the Census Bureau in time for our elections this year. Unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be the case, which means that my unfortunate colleagues on the House side are looking at elections 3 years in a row. And we don't know where our districts are going to end up looking like until they complete that work. George Barker is one of the senators who has done, who is on the commission. He's done an enormous amount of work. He was very involved in the last redistricting effort. But again, they're going to be prohibited from having conversations with us about the districts and the specifics. There will be public meetings that will go on around the state. We put some safeguards in so that they have to take into consideration, you know, communities of interest, racial, ethnic background and makeup. I'm looking forward to this. Is something that we all campaigned on for years and years and years. And so I'm eager to see how it's all going to work out. But again, I don't have a front row seat at that anymore because it's been taken out of our hands.
Good. Delegate, thank you. Delegate Reed and then Senator Bell, anything that you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, sure. So it is really very interesting times, because had we gotten the census data by around early May, we might have been able to do the districts, the new districts for the 2021 elections. Now the rumor is, and a lot of this is just rumor right now because we're not really getting anything definitive from the Bureau, the Census Bureau. But now what we're hearing is that it'll probably be the August timeframe, which then really speaks to what Senator Boisco was saying, is that we will have to run, meaning we, the delegates here in Loudoun, will run in the current districts. Now, there is some debate. I know that some folks say that we might have to run 3 years in a row, but there is some debate about whether or not that would actually happen or not. I hope that that is not the case, because I hope that we can do it in 2021 and then again in 2023. I think it's important to kind of understand what this is going to mean for Loudoun County, because Loudoun County has grown so rapidly. So the district that I represent and the district that Delegate Subramanian represent, each probably has over 100,000 people in those districts right now. So that's like the central eastern part and the eastern part of Loudoun County. If the population of Virginia is 8.5 million, which seems to be what the number is going to be, then a delegate district would be 85,000. So that means that we would probably both have to like lose some population. But what that means to Loudoun County is that we will probably pick up another delegate seat or additional fractional delegate seats and probably another Senate seat. And those will be seats that will migrate or move from less populous areas down in Southwest Virginia. So when we do this next year or the year after that, you will probably have more people that you will have to coordinate with and that you will welcome to the Loudoun Chamber event. And you may even have to make it longer so that you can like get questions in for everyone. But it will be good for Loudoun, because Loudoun will then also have a larger delegation in Richmond that will be able to advocate on behalf of Loudoun businesses and the issues that are important to Loudoun.
More, in this case, more is better than less. I completely agree with you on that. Senator Bell, anything you want to add? And Senator Bell, who would make the decision if we know about whether it's a 21 and 23, or heaven help us, 21, 22, and 23?
Well, largely it's going to come whether the census appears or not, and all the best information tells us it's not. That's just another victim of the pandemic, unfortunately. But the Redistricting Commission is going to have to make their decisions, and obviously right now they have to use the current districts and the last census information, which they really just can't do their job without that last bit of information. My hope is obviously we would have that and be able to do it this year. I supported the redistricting amendment and the process. I think it's much better than what we have today, which frankly, politicians like us, are given the opportunity to make our own district, and it's just got a conflict of interest there that has not worked well. People from both parties around the country and in Virginia have been guilty of gerrymandering. So I think while this process, there's issues with it, it's not perfect. It's much better than what we have today. The last thing I will say is I agree with, so my answer to your question is I don't know. Because we really don't know. I mean, with the pandemic, it's thrown the census up in the air, and the Redistricting Commission just doesn't have that very important tool to do their job. But we do know some of the trends, and we can look at what the changes are going to be. I'll just piggyback on what Delegate Reed said. In the Senate, our districts are supposed to be around 200,000. My district is 265,000. It's the largest one in Virginia. The second largest is Senator Boisco, is about 235. And so if you look at the two of us, there's almost 100,000 people that need to be taken from those. That's half of a new Senate district. So what we've seen is as the coal industry has gone away and some other industries have gone away in Virginia, people have moved to Northern Virginia because our economy is booming. Jobs are here. So as a result of that, I suspect we will probably get new districts and more representatives in Northern Virginia and in Loudoun County. Who knows what our districts will look like? I fully expect, logically, my district now includes Loudoun and Prince William. I think it will become a Loudoun only district because there's been so much growth in Loudoun County. So stay tuned. I am happy that our hands are not, in this. And I say let the chips fall where they may, and that's the best way we can represent people, because our current districts, we have people scattered all winds, and it's hard to represent the interest of, say, Eastern Loudoun and Western Loudoun, who want different things, and it's also very difficult when you have as the old saying is, if the district looks like a snake, it was probably drawn by a snake, and unfortunately we have a lot of those in Virginia right now. So with that, I'm very excited about the new process. It's unfortunate we're not going to get it as quick as we wanted it, but I'd rather do it right than do it quick. And I think that's the most important for the people.
Thank you. Delegate Murphy.
One of the things I've heard, and I'm not on P&E, but one of the things I've heard is that they're going to try and keep the districts in just one county, like Fairfax County and Loudoun County, and not have us spread out the way that we are. So I'm anxious to see if I lose one of the favorite parts of my district. This has been such a wonderful experience working with all of you that I would be very sad if they cut the Loudoun part of my district off. But
Tracy, if I can just add into kind of one of the things that Senator Bell and Delegate Murphy were saying. When you get elected to these positions, you develop an affinity for the entire district that you represent. And so one of kind of the unintended consequences or benefits of us not being involved is that we would not have to make the choice about where we would have to trim our districts to get it down to the right level, because I would not want to have to make that decision, because again, you develop an affinity for all of the precincts in your district and all of the different things that make it unique and the character that it has. And so again, to kind of what Senator Bell and Delegate Murphy were saying is that we know that the districts will probably have to get smaller, and there are going to be different criteria that are going to be used now, but I'm kind of glad that I'm not involved with that decision making.
Well, I'm going to turn the Q&A over to Grafton. We've gotten some questions from others who are attending this event. So Grafton, turning it over to you.
Great. All right. The first question is from Leesburg Town Council member Neil Steinberg. Every time a development or public infrastructure is built without vehicle electrification infrastructure, it means expensive retrofitting will be required. How do we get business to get involved now?
So Grafton, if I can address that, and because this is one of the things that I have been working on, is that we have to recognize that it's like some things and I'm not going to speak, well, from a business standpoint of view, as well as from a residential standpoint of view, we have to recognize that we need to have the infrastructure in place. If you have a single family home, and in full disclosure, okay, I also own a Tesla, but if you have a single family home, you can install or have installed local charging for you. But for the many people that we're talking about who want to buy an electric vehicle, who happen to live in a multifamily dwelling unit, it's really not going to happen for them, because it's like, okay, the homeowners association or the condo association is not going to look too favorable upon them running a cord out of their balcony and down to charge up their car. So one of the things that I've initiated, and I'm still working on a draft of this letter, and I'm sure that my colleagues will sign on to this, is the individuals who actually do the changes to the building code. We are asking them to consider that going forward, so prospectively, that when new multifamily dwelling units are being developed, that they would be pre-configured to be able to support, say, 10 or 20% of electrical vehicle charging infrastructure. That then goes back to the point that Senator Boisco was saying, that creates a new business opportunity, because we're not going to tell those homeowners associations how they need to go about doing that or who they need to work with, but they would then be able to go to multiple vendors and say, we have this infrastructure in place. Would you be interested in actually installing the electrical part and doing the charging stuff? And would you then be, in turn, much like, say, a Coke machine or a vending machine, sharing some of the revenue with the homeowners association? So we're working on doing this through building code changes, which is that you don't do those things through legislation, because then what happens is that the building code, if legislators are changing the building code, then the builders can never really kind of stay up with what's going on. So we're doing that through a letter to the building code. And so I think that will kind of address some of those concerns going forward.
And I'll just add, so the bill that I carried that looks at the electrification of the transportation system, it's going to be a study, and that they're going to lay out where the efforts need to go. And once we get that, I would encourage them to reach out to DOT, actually, to the Secretary's office, just to, if there is an interest in that. There are groups that are already working on these kinds of things in the transportation industry. I know Monica Backman, who is here with us today, who works for NVTA, is involved in a lot of that stuff, and I bet Tracy is as well. So if there are specific business opportunities that someone has in mind around this electrification of the transportation system, I would encourage them to start reaching out and asking some questions right now, so that they can be involved in the next steps as laying out the planning.
Hey, Tracy, I wanted to just add one quick thing too. I think the electrification study is going to help us with this a great deal. But the other thing I would encourage businesses to consider investing. While I agree with Neil's point, it's more expensive to do retrofits. Existing businesses, this is a great way they can adapt, because I believe it's going to be a real positive for businesses who have this ability. When I get a hotel in Richmond, I typically now go to the West End, because it automatically has high-speed Tesla chargers there, and they're offered free to anybody who stays there. I think many guests are going to want that. And if you look at where the charging points are along major interstates, along communities, it actually brings people there while they charge their vehicles to do business, to walk-in businesses. They spend money, they eat at restaurants. It's good for businesses. So I think this is something to consider your future business plans, investing in these kind of infrastructure, because we have a large number of electric vehicles in Loudoun County. And the Tesla store that's in Tyson's is actually the #1 selling store in America. So and a great deal of those sales are actually going to people in Loudoun. So it's something to consider.
So Grafton, just again, something Senator Bell made me think about something else is that it really can be beneficial. I have heard individuals anecdotally say, I stopped at the mall, or I stopped at a place to be able to charge my Tesla, charge my electric vehicle, and it cost me $100. It's not because it cost $100 in electricity. It's because while it was charging, they went inside and bought some shoes. And then they came back. So it can be a draw to businesses. And if you haven't heard, there's actually a Wawa over in Vienna that was built out, and it has no gas pumps at all. It's only all electric. So this is an indication where the market is starting to recognize the value of this, because individuals will stop and charge for 15, 20 minutes, go in, get a sandwich, do some shopping. And so you actually end up creating more dwell time in retail businesses while people are charging.
Great. All right, we've got 2 more questions, and I'm keeping an eye on the clock, so let's see if we can get them in. Our first question is actually going to be asked live by the Executive Director of the Northern Virginia Transportation Alliance, Jason Stanford. So, Jason, I believe you are live.
Thanks, Grafton. Assume everybody can hear me. Great. Thank you for the opportunity to ask a quick question today. Loudoun is really lucky to have legislators who have been such strong champions of our transportation infrastructure, and each of you, I know, even just throughout this conversation, have demonstrated a real passion for improving our transportation system. My question today is regarding the Greenway. You mentioned legislation that was passed this year that locks in sort of the current level of Greenway tolls. Delegate Reed, I know that you carried legislation working with the administration this session that would have also taken a step towards lowering tolls on the Greenway, which didn't pass. How can we get to a place where we can make the Greenway more like the other toll lanes in the region, such as allowing for distance-based tolling and actually lowering tolls for many Greenway users?
All right, who'd like to take the first stab at that one?
Yeah, Delegate Subramaniam here. That's a great question. Yeah, I think that the legislation that the delegation passed this year was a really critical first step in that process, because one of the things we were concerned about was long-term multi-year toll increases without any sort of ability by the State Corporation Commission to actually enforce kind of the original intent of the statute, which was to protect toll road rate payers. And so, by getting that done, essentially anytime there's a request to increase tolls, they have to come before the commission and they have to prove that there's a really good reason to do that. And that's a huge first step. When one of the things I was concerned about, I have a 1-year-old, I don't want her paying $20 tolls per station in 20 years. That's a really important concern, is I don't want guaranteed toll increases unless there's a real reason to do that. The next step is finding a way to lower tolls without having to eventually increase tolls after that. I think that in the end, I'd love to see us come to the table with the business community, with the Greenway, and see if we can hammer out a solution long term. But if that's not there, then that's not there. But we have to find a way to prevent toll increases because they're already too high.
Yeah, if I can add on this, this was again a piece. The Greenway legislation was a long-term thing that we've worked on, and frankly, a number of stops and starts got us to the position where we're at. The one thing we had this year that really was important is the SCC examiner's report, which just came out and really gave us a roadmap of what they needed in legislation to properly regulate the Greenway. And it's important to point this out. The Greenway is just a different kind of an animal. It's the only privately owned road operating in the Commonwealth, and it's operating under one piece of legislation from 1995. And it was really called a public-private partnership, but it really wasn't. It was more of a private road allowed to operate in Virginia, and the Commonwealth has basically no skin in the game. So we've learned a great deal about public-private partnerships since then. And I think, we can, as Delegate Subramaniam said, going forward, I think there will be a time and a place for us to come back and look at it. And I think Delegate Reed, he probably wants to talk about his legislation, but there'll be a place for that legislation as well as we try to hopefully get a better deal. But I'll plant the seed for this. I would love to see us have a east-west corridor solution for the Greenway and the Dulles Toll Road. That's a 28-mile stretch. I would love to see distance-based pricing for all 28 miles versus just 14 miles in either way, because the tolls are really high on both. And many commuters from Leesburg and outer areas do both of those tolls. Then they get on the Beltway, the 66 inside the Beltway have another toll. So I think we need to look at this as a end-to-end commuting solution and an end-to-end commuting challenge, because for these folks, those tolls on each of those roads are part of their daily life. And it really hits their budget, and it impacts where they can work and how much they can really spend in Loudoun County for a home and other things. So this is a challenge we need, and I hope that this step gets us to the point where we have the framework to do just that.
Thank you. Grafton, I think you've got one more question because we're almost done. You guys have been really good about this.
I do. One more question. 3 minutes left, lightning round. And actually, this is a long question. It is posted in the Q&A feature. So if you guys take a look at the Q&A feature, this is the one listed by anonymous attendee. You can see it. It begins with, "There is a concern," by NASCO and others. So I will tell you, this is a question by one of the technology companies here within the chamber. Very specifically, just for the audience, is Virginia going to have to wait for clarifying guidance from Washington before spending the pandemic recovery funds? Wait for clarifying guidance from Washington on spending those funds before using the money to improve technologies, because the pandemic has changed the way that we operate. Please go ahead when you're ready.
So I'll start with that. So we did a lot in our budget this year that conforms us to the federal guidelines. We're giving back $100,000, in tax credits for PPP. But there is conversation that we may have to have a special session to address the new funds that have just been allocated by the federal government. We're still waiting to hear that. I know that we are already going to have to go back in early June or mid-June to deal with some judicial appointments, but there is a very good chance that the General Assembly will be recalled to determine how we're going to allocate the funding for the newest tranche of federal funds. But my understanding was in our budget this past year, we did quite a bit to make sure that we were in line with what the federal government was doing as far as taxes, so that people can go ahead and start filing their taxes. I don't know if I've actually answered your specific question already, but perhaps one of my colleagues wants to clarify that.
So Grafton, if I can kind of add in here, kind of from the view from the Appropriations Committee, is that we actually added in legislation into the budget that had indicated that instead of the governor just having executive power to make decisions about the additional American Recovery Act money that was going to be coming down, that he make unilateral decisions, that it would have to include the legislative branch. And so to that end, assuming that he doesn't strike that from the budget when he sends it back down to us for the veto session, then we will be engaged in that. Now, one of the things that I think has happened at the federal level is that because of the initial COVID relief plan, there was a lot of uncertainty about, can you do this? Can you do that? What can you do? When can you do it? When's the money going to expire? I think this plan, the new legislation and the money that will be coming from the federal government, is much more thought out and had the ability to be able to learn from those lessons. So what we're already seeing is that the money will come down to the localities. Some localities will get specific money and the guidance will already be there. There will be additional money that will come to the state. The state can then make decisions about how they're going to invest that. And we have to keep in mind that all of this is going to be one-time funding. So we can't do things like pay raises, because once the federal money goes away, then it would become an obligation of the state. So we're going to need to be looking at things. And I really would encourage members of the chamber, and I was talking with someone last night who was making suggestions about how we can make one-time investments, both in technology and in other things, that would basically help to kind of set us at a new level for moving forward. So I would encourage the business community to say, hey, if we have ideas about how you could use this, and it might mean $1 million here or $100,000 there. But again, we would look to you for those inputs.
Thank you all. I feel like I'm cutting off a really important conversation. I'm glad we're having it. I look forward to follow up, and I really appreciate your asking for business input. Thank you so much for participating in our discussion, panelists. For many of us running our businesses and lives, we're busy people, and this is a wonderful opportunity to learn about your important work. Thank you again to our sponsors, the 2021 PolicyMaker Series signature sponsor, Inova Loudoun Hospital, and today's spotlight sponsor, Dominion Energy. Thank you to all of our PolicyMaker Series advocate and enterprise sponsors. Thank you to our audience members and your questions. We appreciate your energy on these important issues. And finally, let me say thank you to our elected officials, the Chamber Board of Directors, and other honored guests who joined us today. This concludes today's event. Go off and have a wonderful Thursday, and I wish you plenty of opportunity to enjoy the beautiful spring weather. Take care, everyone.
Thanks very much for having us.
Always great seeing you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.